this has to be like the next level of action cameras, because this is not only an action camera, it's also a 360 camera. How cool is that? Action cameras has basically looked the same ever since the first GoPro camera came out. Like, the only difference that has been on action cameras is basically that they have gotten like a display and yeah, that's basically it. And that is why I think that the Insta360 One R is one of the most innovative action cameras that I've seen ever, and definitely one of the most innovative cameras that I've seen in a long time, because like having an interchangeable lens on such a small camera so that you can go from like an action camera to a 360 camera, that is so cool. So this is gonna be like a first impressions slash hands-on kind of video, and I will drop like a full-on review and comparison towards the DJI Osmo Action later this month. So if you're like looking forward to that, then you like make sure you subscribe and stay tuned, because that will come. And I will say thank you so much to Insta360 for sending this camera out to me before its release, so that I can play around with it a little bit and see what kind of camera it is. The build quality feels pretty solid. I wouldn't say that it's like on par with the DJI Osmo Action, but it still feels like a pretty rugged piece of tech, which I think is pretty cool, especially since you have like the interchangeable lens system. The red piece here on the bottom is the battery, which you like snap on and off with the like little switch down here, and they have the display of the camera, which I also think is like kind of the brains of the whole operation, and they have the lens that you can change. So basically how this camera works is that you got one connector here on the lens, and they have two different connectors on the display slash brains of the camera. So when you're using a lens with one camera, you only use one of the connectors, and then you just smack it on like that. And if you want to like change to the 360, then just like do that, and then you put on the battery again. One thing that I remember with the Insta360 One X that I didn't really like was that you had this like open USB port in the bottom, which allowed moisture and dirt and stuff to like get into the camera, and made it vulnerable to like those kind of sceneries when you take it out skiing or going close to the beach or stuff like that. But this is something that you don't have to worry about this camera. It is also waterproof without any cage up to 5 meters, which is totally dope. But since you have this attachable battery here in the bottom, it doesn't make the camera as protected as the DJI Osmo or the GoPro Hero 8, which is kind of a bummer, because an action camera has to put up with a lot of different like rough situations. And when I was testing out the waterproofing on the camera, I dropped it and it landed on a sandy bottom, which actually destroyed the whole locking mechanism of the camera, and you can hear that it's still some sand in there. So now when I have to put on the battery, then I have to make sure that I actually like lock it in place and make sure that it's like sits there securely, because the locking mechanism doesn't work anymore due to the sand that actually got into the different moving parts. And there's also like a small little tiny gap between the battery and the actual camera, which kind of worries me a little bit, because that is like somewhere that sand and dirt will get in and might just put your camera into a dangerous place. And I mean, like when you're looking at the DJI Osmo Action, there is no weak points at all on this camera. But then again, the Insta360 One R does have an interchangeable lens system, and that is something that the Osmo Action does not have. You also do get the classical like action camera cage, so that you can put the camera in, and if you're gonna go on a bumpy ride, it's gonna be safely secure in here. And it also has this like regular tripod mount in the bottom, which is really good, because then you can put it on a regular tripod and you don't have to buy all the different like accessories that you have to do with the GoPro. So that's something that I really like with this cage. The microphone also seems to be like in front of the camera, which I hope makes the audio quality from this camera better than it usually is on GoPros and different like action cameras, because usually the audio quality is not that great. But I will compare the audio towards the DJI Osmo in the coming video. One of the cool things with the display when you're using 360 camera is that you can just double tap on the display to choose the camera that you want to look through in the display, which is pretty dope. But I mean, like, since it's a 360 camera, you still get the whole like 360 field of view when you're shooting with this camera. But it's still nice to like see what the camera sees, even though you know that you will get the entire shot in 360. And when you want to use the action camera lens, one of the cool things that you can do is that you can either put on the lens like that so that the display is facing you, or you can just like twist it around and have it in full-on selfie mode without having to worry that you're not seeing yourself when you're shooting. Well, I do think that is really innovative that you can like turn the display like that. I do also see some weak points with it, because like sometimes you like want to have the ability to switch the camera around like that and still be able to see what you do. But if you're on the beach, or if you're going snowboarding, or if you're doing something like driving a motocross, or I don't know, you probably don't want to like pick your camera apart and risk that something gets into the sensitive part just because you want to like switch the display of the camera. When you're using the 360 lens on the camera, it still gives you a 5.7K resolution in your videos, and that basically means that the entirety of that 360 image is 5.7K. So like when you're cropping in to a normal perspective in that 360 image, it still won't give you a resolution that is more than 1080p, which is kind of a bummer. But when you're using the 4K wide angle mod, or the action camera lens that I'm saying, that will give you a true 4K video that is covering the entire frame. And if you want to plug in an external microphone to the camera, that is something that you can do because it's charged through USB-C, so you can buy in USB-C through 3.5mm connector, and then you can use that as your external microphone. But it doesn't have like a dedicated 3.5mm port built into the camera. There is also going to be like a third lens that you can buy for this camera that has been co-engineered together with Leica. Probably going to be expensive as hell, and that will give you a 1-inch sensor together with a 5.3 resolution in that lens, which is pretty cool. So I really like the fact that you can like buy lenses for your action camera. So I'm really looking forward to like play around with this camera a bit more before I drop the actual review and comparison towards the DJI Osmo Action. But I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the camera? Do you think it's cool and innovative as I do, or do you think it's like just another gimmick on the market? I would love to know, so please do drop a comment below. And if there's something that you want me to include in the review of this camera, then do drop a comment on that below as well. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Really hope that you enjoyed this first impression / hands-on video with the Insta360 One R. And if you haven't subscribed, that'd be highly appreciated. And until next time, take care.